Hello, ZofiaRennea Morales. How are you today?
Hello, Whitney Walker. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, welcome to Women Awaken. It's so wonderful to have you with us. Zofia, I was on your podcast, which is actually more like is it an online show?
It's an online radio show, yes, through Voice America. Yeah.
Yes, The Sovereign Self, which is a
Yes.
beautiful title. We
Thank
had
you.
such a lovely conversation. I loved being a guest on your show. I felt very
Oh,
much held in your sensible mystic space.
thank you.
Yeah, so
That's
you refer to yourself as a sensible mystic, which to me kind of translates as into relatable, right? You don't have to be
yeah,
up on in the clouds to understand a bit of your mystic perspective.
exactly. It was actually given to me by one of my earliest clients. She would call up and I've got all this weird stuff going on and I'm like, okay, here's the mindset stuff. Here's, ritual you can do around it. And here's some really practical shit you can do too.
Like, I'll take that.
And she's like, I love this. I come to you for that woo mixed with, the practical hands-on day-to-day stuff as well. You
Yeah.
don't just leave me out there with, well, visualize more intently or hold the vibration in your body. You give me ways to like really make that happen.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to keep your feet on the ground and your arms up to the sky, right? It takes
Yeah.
both. And I think that that's what we need a lot of is people who are able to bridge a bit the physical world and the spiritual realm and allow them to know that they're just as important as the other. We don't want to abandon the physical just because we're now opening up more to the power and the importance of the spiritual realm and the messages there and the information and insight we can gain from it. But we still have to be able to bring it down to practical purposes because we are human beings in a physical world.
Yeah. And we still have to express ourselves through our physicality into this physical body. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I call it walking with a foot in both worlds.
Yes, love it. And Zofia, you're also a transformational alchemist. I love that word alchemy. So
Yes.
can you explain what that it means to you, being that transformational alchemist?
What it means to me is that I hold a very powerful transformational space for people to step into, to drop the things that have held them back in the past, to remake themselves into a new, what I want to say, a new form that fits them better in today's world, to take that step to the next level of your expression in this world, basically. And sometimes we need someone who can hold that space, who can show us the mirror and go, okay, here's the process. We're going to go through it together. We go through it together. And then you come out the other side, a shiny new butterfly.
Yeah. And what can that look like for people, Zofia? Because I know for me, I've been hearing a lot lately, time of transformation, and you're going to, completely change everything. And I'm getting these strong messages, and it can be a little daunting where it feels like, well, what's going to change? Am I going to go live in a cave? Am I going to, have a new name and a new identity? But I don't
I'm,
think it's always that intense. You can
yeah,
transform and
well,
still be you.
exactly. And I think the cave is one of those things that, it's a time honored thing, right? You wake up and you go ponder your navel in some cave in Tibet. Okay. That there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Okay. If you isolate yourself in a cave in Tibet, and you really do your meditation and you're connecting and whatever, you will absolutely progress spiritually. What is the impact you'll have on the rest of the world? A big fat zero.
Mm.
Okay. And I don't think we're here to just bring ourselves forward. Yes, that needs to be job one for each of us, right? Because peace starts inside of yourself, enlightenment starts inside of yourself. But it's the example that you set that inspires other people to move forward and do that same work for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think everything in life moves in an ebb and a flow and in and out, a connecting and apart. One of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite sort of paraphrasing about relationships is that be apart in your togetherness, I think is the phrase, because when we connect, whether it's, romantic or even like a friendship, we're not meant to stay connected, right? In the same way that we're not meant to stay forever in the cave, but we're also not meant to stay forever giving and connecting with others. We need time to ourselves. That's sort of the ebb. And then we flow out with others. And then we have time with the self where we grow. But then sometimes change can only happen in relation to others, in relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree with that very much. Part of the reason I use the analogy of walking in both worlds is because walking, we think of it as, well, you move forward in this straight line. But the truth of the matter with walking is you swing over to one side and then you swing back to the other side with each step going forward. And so what looks in the end like it's kind of this straight line sort of experience is actually this really subtle zigzag where you tilt more to one side and then more to the other. And that's what makes it work. That's what makes it smooth and wonderful, is that shifting from one to the other in the moment as it's needed. And I think it's a beautiful analogy for how to balance the spiritual world and the mundane world. A little of this and then a little of that, and a little of this and a little of that.
Yes. It is a dance though, right? It's a graceful dance that does take time to get comfortable with, to get into the flow with. Yeah. I think the problem is resistance, right? We think, oh, no, I should have stepped here and there. And then rather than.
Yeah, just allowing and going with flow. One of the myths, I think, in the awakening world, if you will, is that you step into this world of like connectedness and woo and bliss and positive vibes, and this is the only thing that ever happens in your life from here on out. You've got the easy button, just cruise through the rest of your life. That is not how this works.
Yeah, it's not.
You will have moments of grace and ease and wonderful woo and serendipity, and then you will have moments where you swing back into the really practical, got to go pick up the kids and the milk and get dinner on the table, and then we swing back into the woo and the wonder and just back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. And you speak to that. We think that we're going to kind of get into cruise control mode and just cruise, but you use the phrase transformational alchemist. Well, both of those words, include the concept of change and shift. Alchemy only occurs by a reaction that's not, quiet. It's tumultuous. That's when we get the biggest change. And just as we were saying, it's the rhythm. So yes, you'll have this big alchemical, expression, and then you'll have adapting into that. And then there'll be another change because, I've heard that the word life is synonymous with change. Life is change. There's no life without change, because then life would end.
Absolutely. You do not want all of your cells to go into a static state. Yeah. That would be very, very bad. That's called death.
Yeah.
And it's imperative that your cells continue to change and adjust and all this as you go through life. Mm-hmm. And just as we as human beings change and adjust and grow as we go through life. And those are the people who thrive the best, the ones who are like, all right, this is my now moment and it's fabulous. And then the next thing arrives and, well, this is now my now moment. And this is fabulous also. Maybe different from what went before, but there's still fabulous things about it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So Zofia, to kind of, give something tangible to the audience, for those who are kind of in my position where I'm in a transformative time in my life, let's say I want to work with someone like you, a transformational alchemist who can be like, let's help you shift some of these energies, get into that zone where you're changing. What do you do to help someone identify what they really need to start alchemizing or transforming, to start adjusting or shifting? I know that transformation also comes not just with bringing things in, but releasing stuff that we've been doing.
One of the first things that I recommend, and this comes from my science background, is to move into a neutral observer kind of place, right? Because when we're deep in our stuff and there's this profound stuff going on inside of us, our judgmentalness tends to come back out in force. And one of the best things you can do for yourself is just step back and be neutral to what it is. Okay, change is hard. Give yourself that. Change is hard. Step into a neutral position and look at, what does this really mean? What are the patterns that are sitting here in front of me? Because there are always patterns. And pay attention to the questions that you're asking, because the questions are the keys that unlock the next door and the next door and the next door. And free will allows us to choose which of those keys we want to use. So we can sit there and ask, well, why the heck does this shit always happen to me? That opens a particular door. I've opened that door before. I don't like what's behind that door. So I choose not to use that question anymore. And I choose to get curious about, well, how is this the universe serving me? How does this pull me forward? How is this elevating my life? Okay, because many times when change arrives, it looks like complete and total, utter devastation. Okay. And part of that is the nature of change, right? We've asked for a lot of things in our life. We have these goals that we want to accomplish, things that we would like to bring into this world, manifest, if you like that word. But the thing we forget is we can't receive when our hands are full. If you've got your hands full of something else, you can't receive this big, amazing thing that you've just asked for. So the first thing life does, the universe, is it slaps all that shit out of your hands, which is very disorienting. It tends to make us panicky as humans. The foundation has been shaken. And so it's normal to have that reaction of, oh my God, now what? Have your freak out, but then take that nice deep breath, get curious and ask, what is this setting the stage for? How does this serve me? How does this pull me forward? And that will open the doors that you want to see opened.
Yeah. Wow. That is a really powerful statement, and a great visual is that you can't receive if your hands are full. If you've already said, I'm all full up here, I got what I need, or at least I have, something that I'm holding, then how can you take something? And I think that's why there's a lot of statements around release
Yes.
what doesn't serve you. Because again, if you're all stocked up, if there's a no vacancy sign on your personal motel, how can you take anything in?
Exactly. Well, and here's what tends to happen, right? You've got your hands full of your life as you know it right now. Your health is a certain thing. You've got a partner, you don't have a partner. You've got kids, you don't have kids. Whatever it is, the job, the career, whatever is in your life, and your hands are all full of this. And you're kind of attached to it because, that's your familiar place. And as humans, we love our familiar place. And then life comes along and says, you asked for this amazing change where you're going to live this laptop lifestyle and you're going to be serving people in a dramatically different way. And it comes and it smacks all that shit out of your hands. And you can choose to scramble and try and pull all those pieces back together and scoop them back into your hands. Or you can go, oh, that was wow. Okay. So what is it that you want me to hold my hands out for? And you can choose to just release, relax in, allow what's happening to happen, and wait and see what arrives in your open hands. Yeah. Because you can't receive while you're scrambling around trying to keep all of the pieces together either.
Yeah. So this makes me ask, when we talk about releasing, because part of me thinks of like getting rid of things, right? Like, okay, this has got to go. But then the way you just said it, it feels more like, okay, so let's say you have your hands closed, right? You definitely can't receive if you're holding something like this. But if you open your palms and you say, I am open and willing to anything that wants to come or go, right? Yes. Kind of like the way that a tree receives birds and it sits there and lets things come and go.
It receives birds, it receives rain, it receives wind, it receives sun, all of the things. Right. And the more you can just allow your life to ebb and flow, the more miracle and synchronicity you allow in. When we try to get overly controlling with it, and what do I want to say? To impose what our mind believes is accurate about the situation on the situation, that's when you start to get caught up in these cycles that are hard on you emotionally. Yes. Because you spend a lot of time going, well, it should not be this way, it should be this other way. And there's a lot of pain in that conflict, in that dynamic between it, the way it should be and the way it is. The sooner you can relax into, okay, it is the way it is, and that's fine. Show me the blessing. The sooner you release the pain and the struggle around it, and the sooner you allow the blessings to arrive in. A lot of times we think that when we set a goal, we have in our mind the way it's going to look when we get there. And the most important thing you can do is release that idea of what it has to look like and just allow it to arrive as it arrives. That it's an interesting trick to move into and through, because, especially if you're like me, right? I was trained in science, very logical, rational kind of person. And I find if I can step into curiosity, it makes that much easier for me. Mm-hmm. The other tool that I absolutely love for changing things like beliefs and automatic responses to things is hypnotherapy. Because it goes to where those things are stored, which is your subconscious mind. Right. And so subconscious mind, why is it that we believe that, it has to be XYZ way when, I know, or I feel in my heart that it could be this other way? And your subconscious will talk to you and say, well, it's because of this thing that happened when you were a child. And we came to the conclusion that if there's no money in the house, you're not safe. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we always have to have money, and we're not willing to ever release it to continue that flow in the world, right? It'll get cross-wired in these weird ways. And when you do hypnosis, you can go, oh, well, we've outgrown that. I don't need that anymore. We can let that go and bring something in that does serve you. Yeah. And it happens so fast.
Yes. Wow. Okay. A bunch of things you just said. One, that's the second time I've heard that message today, that you need to release your idea about how things will show up and just let them show up as they are. So yeah. I think, and I've heard that in many spheres recently. So I think it's a collective thing right now. We all have very fixed mindsets. We're human beings. There's a lot of programming that happens when we come into this world around what you need, what you have to have, what are, essentials for life. The reality, I believe, is that there's actually no essentials to life. We've just made it all up. And so we live by those rules and it causes us a lot of detriment. So I think that releasing, again, it's all, this whole show seems about moving from here to here.
Yeah. Right? From that closed thing into the open palms where you can receive. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, letting it come in and just without judgment, just, oh, okay, that wasn't what I thought, but it's what's coming to me. If it's coming to you, how can it not be for you? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And how can it not serve you in some way? Even the ugliest things in the world can serve you in amazing, beautiful ways, whether it's that you lost a child in a car wreck or you were falsely accused and you ended up in prison. These can all be blessings in their own way, as difficult as they are, and those are profoundly difficult. There are always blessings that come out of it. Maybe perhaps because you're incarcerated, you have the opportunity to develop art skills that you never would have if you'd stayed in the busy, busy world, and you become a famous artist out of it. There are a number of inmates who've done this, right? You lose a child and it motivates you to become engaged in the world in a different way, whether it's Mothers Against Drunk Driving or against gun violence or whatever the thing was that took your child. Yeah. A lot of times that's how people get started on these causes that make a profound difference in the world. And while there's an overwhelming grief that goes with that, and grief never completely goes away, although it will attenuate somewhat, there's a blessing that comes out of that you'd have never had that not happened in your life. And that can be in the form of a mission that helps you save other families from having to go through that same event. And there are lots of rewards for that sort of helping in the world.
Yes.
Emotional ones, as well as monetary and
Yeah.
cultural.
Yeah. And I want to share a sentiment that was offered by, I had a grief coach on the show, and she said, grief never ends because love never ends.
That's
And
right.
the only reason grief exists is because we loved something dearly, and we will miss it always. And that's, so it's a painful thing, but it's an exquisitely painful thing, in that it's made of love. It indicates
Absolutely.
love.
Absolutely. And I think the beautiful thing about going through the grieving process is what you just said. It affirms the depth of your ability to love, but it can also serve as rocket fuel for you to step into something that's really important to you. And that will take your life a whole different direction than you ever imagined.
Absolutely. And I think also, to what you were speaking to, Zofia, is that people who face what we would see as worldly atrocities, some of the things you mentioned that we can't even, most of us can't fathom experiencing or being able to overcome or live on afterwards. But people have, and they've found, just as you said, within them, it's, we all know that the greatest, again, alchemy happens with the strongest reactions, right? With the
Yes.
most challenging of times comes that phoenix from the ashes, this, like, you're truly, like, your soul's essence, like, just, rising up to the
Yeah.
surface. And
It's
you're right.
it's the fuel to fund or to fire the change, right?
Yes.
Because a chemical reaction typically doesn't happen at room temperature where everything's cozy and nice. This is very unusual that anything reacts at that under those conditions. You have to change those conditions to something much more extreme to catalyze that change.
Yes.
So, and up in pressure and up in temperature, the application of liquid where there was nothing before, or the removal of liquid to make something dry. These kinds of situations are what then set the stage for that massive change to occur.
Yes. Yes. And as you said, some of the biggest accomplishments and innovations and greatest services to humanity were often done by people who faced the most dire and detrimental of circumstances, but then decided to live anyways. I mean, I think of Stephen Hawking's, how many of us would see any hope in a life where we felt we could no longer had control of our bodies and only a voice. But just as you said about a prison inmate, he was basically imprisoned in his body, but he found a way to use that. How would he have had the time to just focus on these equations and, mysteries of mathematics that he might not had access to had he been a normal functioning person?
Yeah, and expected to pick up the kids at 4 o'clock on the way home and get the milk and all of this kind of stuff. There is always something that one of these extreme changes will bring to you that's a blessing that you didn't have previously. A lot of times when your soul is inviting you into change, it will do things like take away your career or take away your health, right? These are our hall passes to sit on the sofa and to really think about things.
Yeah.
It gives us a lot of headspace in that moment. If we, get through the freak out, take a nice deep breath and calm ourselves and go, okay, how is this serving me?
Yeah.
Okay, because you can choose in those circumstances to scramble around, try and yank all the pieces together and do all the things.
Yeah.
But you also miss that opportunity that you had for that headspace, for that reinvention of yourself.
Yes. And so much of that involves trusting that, and I'm realizing this a lot lately, Zofia, because this is actually exactly what you just said is happening in my life. I've had the health stuff that was last year for me, where health issues swooped in and completely changed the course I thought I was going to take for last year. And now just recently, my business is shrinking. It's, changing, it's dissolving a bit. And my mental self and my this world self is panicking, because you also spoke earlier, Zofia, of our, the concepts that we hold tight to, right? I need to have my financial stability or else I will flounder and everything will go wrong.
Yes.
But what if we knew that the universe was holding us all the time? What if we knew that the universe sees things we don't? So it says, hey, I actually am helping you lower your client load right now so that you have the capacity to start the next project that's actually going to be bigger than you could ever imagine and bring much more abundance than you have right now.
Yeah.
But to me, and I speak because I think other people can relate. We hold on so tight. Again, the opposite of our theme for the show, releasing. We hold it. We say, no, I need this. Don't take my coins. Don't take my savings. I need it.
Yeah.
And the universe is saying, can you just trust that if you invest these coins, if you take a risk, you'll
have so much more.
Hold. But we are trained to believe that we are, feeble beings that need to be very careful about each step we take and everything we do, and not trust.
Okay, let's go for some evidence. I love evidence in these circumstances. Okay, because we are trained from childhood to be concerned about the boogeyman. Okay, what if this happens? What if that happens? And we project out into the future quite a ways with a lot of our thinking. And in fact, 99.9% of the time that we're in this world, we are fine. There is nothing technically wrong. But in our heads, we're thinking about all of the lions behind the bushes and financial disaster and ending up homeless under a bridge. Okay. But at the moment, you're fine. You're dressed. You recently had a meal. You're breathing. You have a roof over your head. You have people who love you around you, or who come and go from your life with fair regularity, who you can contact. You're in a great place. It's the negative track that's playing in your mind that's making you miserable. And so that's the first thing, is to recognize whether you're being in the moment or whether you're in this projection out into the future. And the more you can be in the moment, the more you'll have that peace and that calm and the feeling of being supported by the universe. And then I promised you evidence. So here's your evidence. How old are you right now? Okay, I'm late 50s.
I'm 37.
Okay, so looking back on the prior 37 years, you've been through some tough times and you've been through some fabulous times, have you not?
I have.
Okay, and you made it through every single one of those tough times, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're here. You're still here. You're doing fine. Okay, there's your evidence that the universe has supported you all the way through that. Because all the way through those prior 37 years, you've got this projection out into the future that goes, well, if I lose this job, all of this cascade of stuff will happen, right? Or if I get sick this way, all of this other cascade of stuff will happen. None of that shit happened, or very little of that shit happened. And guess what? You're still here anyway. There's your evidence. You are taken care of all the way along. It may not look like what you think in your mind it's supposed to look like, but you're taken care of all the way along, and you are still here, and you still got today, and all things being equal, you will likely still have tomorrow also. Okay, I can't guarantee that, right? Because we never know precisely when our exit is going to be, but you're here right now, you're fine. So get up and do that thing. Do that thing you would do if you knew you could not fail.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Do that thing.
But okay, let's say though, then how do you help people with the next step? Is that, what if they say, I don't know what that is. I know that there's something I want to do, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know how to take that step, or what it is, or where it is, or how to find it.
Yes, I call that sitting under the Bodhi tree.
Oh, okay, we have a name for that too. Always good.
Yes, I call that sitting under the Bodhi tree. It's waiting for that Buddha moment that your life purpose shows up in this grand Technicolor vision with all the details. Okay, and I will tell you, it's a blessing that life does not work that way. Because if you knew your life purpose with all the Technicolor details, you would be as intimidated as heck and overwhelmed, and it would be very hard for you to move forward and into that, because a lot of times our life purpose is a thing we grow into over decades. Mm-hmm. And so from where you're at to where that grand purpose is, it's a deliberately long path. Mm-hmm. And so Thank heavens, 99.9% of the time, it does not work that way.
Mm.
How it works is a lot like a GPS. Okay. And you know how you program into your phone, I want to go here, right? I have this kind of feeling that I like this and I'd like to go here. If you program that into your phone and you just sit there, what does your GPS tell you to do? Move back out of the driveway. I can't do anything for you until you're moving.
Mm.
And so how you read your GPS is you look at the things that light you up. I call them soul breadcrumbs. And so if getting up in the morning and going to the library to look for some spiritual books lights you up, go do that thing. Okay. If, coaching your kids' soccer team lights you up, that is absolutely part of your life purpose. Continue to do that or begin to do that, whether you think you're qualified or not. This is one of the, I've been researching women and glass ceilings and this kind of thing. So there's been a lot of like gender reading in my world recently. But one of the things that women have a tendency to wait for is permission. We're waiting for somebody to come look at us and go, you'd be an amazing coach. Why don't you volunteer to coach your daughter's team? Okay. Now, 98% of the time, that's not how that happens. Occasionally, you'll get invited into something, but most of the time, it's like, oh, well, I think that would be interesting, or there's a need there, and I'm going to just try it. There needs to be a willingness on your part to just go try some stuff.
Yeah.
And if it's not for you, fabulous. If it is for you, fabulous. That's part of your soul breadcrumbs that you're following. Do more of that.
Yes. Yes. And then, along with the soul breadcrumbs, another phrase I've heard that really stuck with me is your soul's emphasis is always correct. So when I think of this, when I've had those moments where it's like, okay, great, but I don't know what the next move is, I will often feel drawn, even if it's something like, I want to go to this store today, go to that store, because you might run into somebody after the store. You might see another store you didn't know about, and you might meet someone that invites you somewhere. Your soul is the breadcrumbs are always there. It might not be like this big, oh my gosh, I'm going to go start this class on
almost
astrophysics.
Never something like starting a class on astrophysics, as a matter of fact. And if you would like to regularly make progress towards your goal, this is a spiritual practice that I used for many years. I still use it actually to this day. And that is when I wake up in the morning, that first, like opening the eyes, you're still in that floaty kind of state. This is the theta state. At that time, ask your higher self, what is the single most important thing for me to accomplish on my mission today? Mm-hmm. And whatever little mundane thing drops in, and it will seem silly and mundane, go do that thing. Make it the only thing on your to-do list. Do that thing. If you do nothing else, do that thing. And it will lead you amazing places.
Yes, absolutely. And something else I'll tie in there is that I know for me, I get frustrated because I'll do that and I'll feel like I hear nothing. But then a few hours later, I'll say, I want to go for a hike at that park. And that's your answer. Sometimes it doesn't come right away, because I think sometimes it's because we get in our own way. We
think about how that answer is supposed to arrive to us, right? Yeah. And in our mind, we'd like to ask that question, and boom, something drops in. And for me, that's frequently what happens, because that's part of my spiritual modality. Questions are a very key thing for me. I'm claircognizant. And so when I ask a question, I leave my mind blank and allow that answer to arrive. And it tends to do that. Yes. Not everyone is claircog. Some of us are clairsentient, meaning it arrives in our body.
Our feelings, right?
Yeah. Or it arrives in our sense, whether it's a feeling or a physical sensing. And some of us,
claircognizance is like a knowing, right?
It's a clear knowing. Yes. Yeah. Clairvoyance, you hear actual words. Clairvoyance you see, clairaudience you hear. I don't know why I flip those around all the time. I guess because I'm a cog and not a voyant.
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes you'll get an image of something, sometimes you will hear something, sometimes you get a feeling in your body, you'll get a knowing. It arrives many different ways for different people. So this is another space where you just have to let go in your mind of what you think it ought to look like.
Mhm.
Okay. Because many of us have watched a lot of Hollywood and it's like, oh, I want to be clairvoyant. I want to, see dead people and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Okay. It's not all it's cracked up to. If you talk to a clairvoyant, they will a lot of times express envy for a clairsentient or a claircog because they don't have to guess what the image means, right? A
Mhm.
claircog is given the information, they just know. A clairsentient feels it in their body. If you're in a healing
Ah,
uh, role, that can be hugely useful when you're sitting with a client, especially one who's disconnected from their own physicality.
yeah.
You can feel into their physicality and go, oh, you've got this thing going on in your knee or your elbow or whatever it is, right?
Mm.
That sometimes the client can't even dial into. So each of these different modes has their own blessing.
Yes.
So it's important to allow yours to just be okay, to be fine. That's how it comes. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad this is coming up because it's something that I actually did a workshop on this, and I'd like to bring it back because we're all psychic beings.
Yep.
We're just like we have five senses. We have all the clairs as well. They're just additional senses that we, for some reason, have decided are not real. They're not, proven
Trustworthy. They're
trustworthy.
not, yeah, all
Yeah,
the
but they're just as
things.
real
Yeah.
as anything else. And we all often brush them off, right? I mean, a lot of it is psychicness is a lot about intuition because you're
Yeah.
trusting this knowing that's coming to you. And one more thing on clairsentience, for those who are listening, it's also, what's the vibe is a popular term now, but that's sort
Yeah.
of clairsentience is, I have it often if I'll meet someone and I'll just think, ooh, like something feels strange in this, or even I'll,
Yeah.
I'll go into a room and I'll say something doesn't feel good here. It feels like there's a lot of sadness here or something was not, and it's trust your sense about it. It's saying maybe this isn't the highest space for you right now. Maybe the
Yeah.
energy here is low. And then there's also what is it? It's when you feel other people's emotions. Claire,
Oh, that that's actually being a physical empath
yeah. Is
or
it
an
clear
emotional
empathy?
empath.
Clear empathy.
Yeah, it can be called clear empathy.
Yeah.
I just call it empathy. Um, and
Yeah.
even that sort of physical empathy comes in a number of flavors. Some of us are more tuned into other people. Some of us are more tuned into the vibration of a place or the vibe of Mother Earth. Some of us are more tuned into animals. Um, and it's sort of like your aptitudes in school, right? They would give you these aptitude tests, and some of you are verbal, and some are more mechanical and more creative, all this sort of thing. It's the same thing with these extrasensory senses.
Mhm.
Some of us, the visual just arrives very easily, and so that's the path that the information comes through. It will come through the path of least resistance. And
Yeah.
for me, it's the knowing and the feeling in the body.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
And
And
we're all just wired a little bit different. So it's important to recognize what your wiring is and to respect that. The most common story I hear in psychic development classes when we're sharing, how to go, did you get any signs this week, blah, 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 blah. The most common one is, I had this feeling that I should not do this. Okay, so what did you do instead? Oh, no, I did it. And I was right. I should not have done it. And so that's like the first step of recognizing that you have intuition, is ignoring it initially. So if you have these feelings and you go ahead and you do it anyway and you realize you should have paid attention, that's the first step, which is awareness that this is happening. And
mhm.
that will allow you now to move into the second step, which is respecting what that intuition is sharing with you. The
Yeah.
respecting the don't do this feeling and
Mm.
going, okay, no, this isn't right for me right now. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you begin to grow beyond that to things to do. right? Once you've
Mhm.
started to listen to things not to do, it tends to expand into things to do. I had this pull to go into this store. I had this pull to talk to this stranger at the bus stop, whatever it is. Um, that tends to be the next evolution, is listening to the things that you're drawn towards, following the soul breadcrumbs.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And one something else that just popped in my head based on my experience last weekend, when I felt an intuitive pull, a soul emphasis to go to an adventure to this park. It was like an hour away, so it was like a little road trip. And I went, and it was just time in nature. And I
Yeah.
walked around, and I was kind of waiting for this big thing, but sort of as I said earlier, that sometimes it comes to you later. We can't, again, it's expecting a certain result, right? As we're talking
Right.
before, if you go somewhere and you're like, all right, I showed up, I'm at this, this mountaintop, and I'm waiting for my, light bulb moment, and it's not here. Sometimes you're just meant to maybe be in nature for the day, because nature
Right.
is
Sometimes what you need is just to step away.
it's just the thing. It's just
Yeah,
the
to
experience, just to have been
relax,
there.
to exactly.
Yeah.
In the West, we have been so programmed to always be productive in every second.
Productive and to get instant gratification, right?
Instant
Instant result.
gratification. Exactly. I want that instant answer. I went to the mountain.
Yeah.
Where's my inner peace?
Yes.
And sometimes you're just intended to go to the mountain to get out of your day-to-day grind, to break up the schedule, to give you some mental rest and headspace.
Mhm.
And sometimes, the answer will arrive there at the end of the day if you've kind of let go of this idea that, yeah, it's got to come, it's got to come. And sometimes it was just, you know what, you need this break. So we're going to send you to the mountain, and you come back more refreshed tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then really, you can never go wrong with time in nature, with the elements, anything like that. It's good. I always feel it returns us back to we ourselves are elements.
Yeah.
We're an element, and which means inherently we have wisdom within us, just as the mountain has its elemental wisdom, just as it is.
Yeah.
It's been around for eons, right? It has an understanding of its own purpose just by being. But that's what we've kind of lost touch with, is we don't believe that we have a purpose just by being. We think we have to
Yes.
do, we have to prove it. We
Yes.
have to
We've become human doings.
human doings rather than human beings. And it's gotten us in a big old rush and a mess. And, we're depleting ourselves in our world in the process,
Absolutely.
because we're running ourselves ragged. We're running the world ragged. It's resources, and it's, cleanliness and state of being, and it's not necessary. So that, Zofia, is the main reason why I've been drawn towards this work, is because I think that change starts by offering new ideas,
Yes.
ways of doing things, and new ways of doing things comes from a new way of being, which comes from a new way of knowing ourselves. When we know ourselves a certain way, we start being a certain way.
Yes. Exactly. Well, and a lot of folks, I can hear people out there already going, well, I don't know how to be any different than I am.
Yeah.
Okay. And I get this a lot when I'm working with clients, for example. It's like, okay, if you were not always continually on alert for someone rejecting you, what would your life be like? I don't know how to be that way.
Mhm.
Okay. You can borrow ways of being from other people. Do you know someone in your life who is confident in themselves and unconcerned about being rejected? Imagine what it's like to be in that state, because you've watched them, you've observed them. Imagine what it would be like to be in that state,
Yeah.
and hold that as your target. Borrow that way of being and try it on a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. See how it, try it on for size, as they say. Be like, what's
Yeah,
this like? And
exactly. So often when we're going through this kind of stuff, it's like, oh my God, I've got to make a choice, and it's huge, and I'm going to be married to it forever.
yeah.
No, no, all of these things pass. All of these things are different stages. All of these things you can accept or reject.
Yeah.
Okay. So try it on for a while. Find out, what are the features? What are the benefits? What does this allow me to do?
Yes.
And then decide if you want to keep it or not.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I remember like early on in my spiritual journey, hearing something like that, where it's like, you try releasing the things that bring you misery, because you can always take it right back. You can go back and get your
Yeah,
misery.
you can go pick it right back up. It's like
Yeah,
losing
but
weight, right? You
yeah,
can find it again if you set your mind to it.
totally. Absolutely. And I think that that's so important for people to know, that it doesn't have to be this, no return type thing, point of no return, that it's just trying different things on. And, when you said, people ask like, well, I don't know how to be that way. And, and with the example of someone who's not walking around afraid of rejection, my belief is that the reason why we fear rejection is because we have a belief about it, that if we get
Absolutely.
rejected, we will be bad. We won't be lovable. Usually it comes down to, we won't get the things we want, or we'll lose something we have.
Yeah.
Somebody said that's what fear is based on.
And there's usually a story around it, right?
Yeah.
Some people have this story that, well, there's something fundamentally wrong with me, and people will figure that out if they get to know me. And so the instant I think they're figuring that out, then I'm going to distance myself because it keeps me safe.
Yes.
Okay, that's a whole, if you've heard this story and that's not your story, you're listening to that story and going, oh my God, what a load of hogwash that is. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but if this is your story that you've been telling yourself for decades, that's going to feel familiar and like it's home.
Yeah.
And I'm going to invite you to move out. I would see you in much better surroundings than that, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's use an example. Maybe you can, because I had this thing happen recently. I'm going to let you know, and you can tell
Yeah.
me from your perspective what you would offer. So I experienced rejection recently from a new friend that I met,
Okay.
and we had a few great times hanging out. And then suddenly they kept declining any offer to connect. And so objectively, there's no problem there, right? Two people try to
Right.
connect. I thought it was working. The other person didn't. But the story I told myself was, I did something wrong. There was something wrong
Mm.
with me. I wasn't interesting enough. I wasn't nice, cool enough. I'd said something rude. I did something bad. I think that's another thing that happens a lot, is if we've gotten the idea that we're a bad person for some reason, maybe we were
Yes.
scolded when we were young for things. Maybe we were shamed for something. And the belief that we're bad is, I think, a belief that a lot of people hold deep down, a
Oh,
fear they have.
especially women.
Yes. Yes. So how, like with me, if I were to walk into your office to work with you and I said, how do I move past this without having this belief come up that this experience meant anything more than just energies meeting and separating because they weren't for each other?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we would do is dig more deeply into this story and the roots of this story. You're telling yourself that it was something that I did that pushed this person away. I
Mm-hmm.
am not attractive because I did something to push this person away. That's the story we would want to unravel on a subconscious level. And so, what I would invite you to do is tell me more about the first time you remember having that feeling.
I mean, I feel like I was almost born that way.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, and I think, and I say this because I think that other people have been there, where, you know, parents are humans and sometimes
Yeah.
they didn't plan on having a little baby.
And then there's this epigenetics thing that happens, and it can literally get moved along in your DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you respond to me in that way, then what I would suggest is, okay, it sounds like it probably is something that was passed to you in utero, because babies can feel what's going on with their mother, and they know whether they were planned and welcomed, or unplanned and unwelcomed, or some combination of the above.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, what I would suggest at this point is we should probably do a regression hypnosis to take you back to that time in the womb, which is when you're stating to me you remember having that sensation the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that allows us to talk to your subconscious about that story, about that belief that feels like it's so integral to your person.
Yeah. That
And
feels very real.
then we can pick that apart. And
Mhm.
so what would you like to have instead of that belief?
Mm,
Ooh,
that
what's a more constructive story?
That I don't know, that anyone who leaves my life is not for me, or that it has anyone that walks away from me it has nothing to do with me. It's not an indication about good, bad, dull,
indifferent,
interesting.
nothing to do with you. It has to do with what's moving and motivating them. Yeah. Excellent. I like that. Okay. That people will come and go from my life as they feel moved to. It has no bearing on my worth as a person or how I've been in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. And so then when we're in the hypnosis session, we would have that conversation with your subconscious. A lot of times it'll show up as, what I want to say, a representative character, little orphan Annie or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we ask your subconscious what it needs from you to be able to make that shift. And we provide for it, whatever it is it needed to be able to make that shift. Mm. And then we ask your subconscious mind, how do we hold this change in place? How do we move forward in this new, more constructive way? And your subconscious provides these answers as we go along, and it's always the perfect fit. And when we're done, hey presto, you've got a whole new way of being. Mm-hmm.
Alchemy,
transformational alchemy, baby.
Brought it full circle. Well, ZofiaRennea Morales, it was so beautiful to have you on the show.
Oh,
thank you for sharing your wisdom as the sensible mystic. You sure provided some lovely, tangible things we can root in the ground and grow from into the cosmos with.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's been my honor and my pleasure. I absolutely adore having these conversations with people. And I'm sure in the show notes, you'll have ways to contact and reach out. So if you'd like to talk to me, go ahead and reach out to me.
Yeah. Would you like to just share, just in case anybody wants to hear what's the best way to contact you, listen to your show, work with you?
There are two doorways into Zofia land. Okay. The first one is an indirect one. I created this thing called the What is Your Number One Superpower Quiz. And you can find that at superpowerquiz.us. And basically what I'm doing is I'm holding up a mirror for you to see what your particular spiritual giftedness is. The primary one. You have more than one, but the big one. Because a lot of times it's like the water we swim in. You know, you just don't notice it.
You're so accustomed to it. It's just
there. You're so used to it. Exactly.
That's just what it is.
So this is, you're looking in the mirror. It's like, oh, you mean not everybody's wired that way? Exactly. Not everybody's wired that way. You have your special giftedness. So that's like the indirect door. You can come and hang out around the edges of Zofia land and get to know me a little bit. If you've got something going on that you would like insight or help with, you can connect with me at bookzofiacoffeechat.com, and Zofia is Zofia. Bookzofiacoffeechat.com, and it'll put you on my calendar for a free 20-minute conversation.
Fantastic.
And you always come away with something practical out of that.
Lovely. All right, Zofia. Well, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take good care.